There's a moment when the noise of the world fades, when the chatter of distractions falls silent, and what remains is a quiet, piercing shame, not because you committed some grievous wrong, but because you've done nothing at all. Stay with me, because by the end of this journey, you'll grasp why Carl Jung believed your undisciplined self isn't lazy, it's exiled. A fragment of you banished to the shadows, yearning to return home. We rarely speak of the toll it takes to watch yourself break the same promise day after day, to whisper tomorrow with a hollow certainty that tomorrow will never come, to pass by the mirror and feel a strange, gnawing resentment toward your own reflection, not because you despise yourself, but because you've lost faith in your own word. You declare you'll change, you'll begin, you even believe it for a fleeting moment. But when morning arrives, the man who made that vow has vanished, replaced by the same weary figure scrolling again, fleeing again, hiding again. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. What if avoiding discipline is exactly that, not mere procrastination, but a spiritual rejection of the person you're destined to become? This is where we start, because what if I told you that the version of you who's tired, unfocused, and easily swayed isn't your true self? What if that's merely a role you've rehearsed, a mask forged from years of small surrenders, worn so long it feels like your face? If these words are already stirring something deep within you, don't just watch, subscribe, because this channel speaks to the parts of you no one else dares to address, the fragments of your soul that ache to be reclaimed. You've been conditioned to believe discipline is about effort, about forcing yourself through endless resistance, but that's a lie. Discipline isn't effort, it's identity. You will never become disciplined until you stop seeing yourself as someone who needs to become it. This may feel strange, even contradictory, but stay with me, because once you understand this, the internal war you wage every morning will begin to make sense. Jung taught that most people never become who they are, not because they lack effort, but because they remain strangers to their own potential. They chase change as if it's external, a new job, a new city, a new system, a new burst of motivation. But the truth is stark. You don't need more. You need less escape, less noise, less hiding from the one thing you've always feared most, responsibility. Not the responsibility owed to others, not to your boss or your family, but to your becoming, the sacred covenant between who you are now and who you were born to be. The sacred fire of discipline. This is where discipline takes root, not in rigid checklists or fleeting surges of willpower, but in devotion, in a quiet, unshakable allegiance to your own soul. Pause and reflect. When have you felt most alive, most truly yourself? It wasn't in moments of idle pleasure or endless rest. It was when you were aligned, when you honored your own word, when you astonished yourself by achieving what you once thought impossible. That feeling wasn't mere pride, it was integrity, the soul's recognition of its own unity, a fleeting glimpse of the wholeness Jung called individuation. He would tell you this is no accident. The psyche craves unity, longs to integrate its scattered pieces. The more fragmented you are, saying one thing, doing another, the more your subconscious rebels, manifesting as resistance, not because you're lazy, but because your mind rejects the fraud of the self you're pretending to be. This is the truth most people miss. Lack of discipline isn't the disease. It's the symptom, the outward sign of a soul divided against itself. One part of you sets ambitious goals, dreams of greatness. Another part sabotages them, retreating into the comfort of distraction. Every day you repeat this cycle. You're not just wasting time, you're deepening the fracture within, carving a chasm between who you are and who you could be. Jung warned that what you resist persists. The parts of yourself you abandon don't vanish, they linger, forming your shadow. This shadow isn't just the dark or broken pieces of you. It's also the disciplined self, the ambitious self, the structured, powerful version of you that you've locked away, fearing failure, or, more insidiously, fearing your own strength. Yes, your strength, that's what truly terrifies you, isn't it? Because if you fully commit to discipline, if you embody it, you'll have no one left to blame. You can no longer hide behind the comforting myth of potential. You'll have to become proof, undeniable evidence of your own capacity. And that's a terrifying prospect. To become proof is to relinquish the safety of ambiguity, to step into a destiny where you're either rising or falling, and the world will bear witness. But here's the brutal reality. You're already falling every time you betray your own intentions, every time you abandon your priorities, every time you choose the fleeting dopamine of distraction over the hard-earned respect of keeping your word. You don't feel tired because of work or external demands. You feel tired because of guilt, because deep within, you know this isn't who you're meant to be. Hear this, not with your ears, but with the marrow of your bones. Discipline is not an accessory you add to your life. It is the soul's immune system. It guards you against spiritual decay, against the slow poison of regret, against becoming a man who possesses everything: wealth, status, approval, except himself. Drop a comment when something strikes a chord. Your words might awaken someone else still trapped in the part of themselves you've begun to heal. Remember this, there was a time you burned for this. Long before the distractions, before the burnout, before you lost faith in your own power. Your spirit hasn't forgotten. It waits, patiently, silently, for you to return to that sacred fire, to the forge where discipline was first kindled within you. We'll go there, we'll reignite it. But not yet, not until we unearth the root, the origin of your undisciplined self, where the fracture began, why you resist structure, and how Jung's theory of archetypes reveals the buried identity sabotaging your every effort. This isn't motivation, this is transformation, a reckoning with the self you've exiled. Once you see it, you'll never return to who you were. The training of betrayal, you didn't become undisciplined by chance. You were trained not by a single cataclysmic event, but by thousands of small betrayals, some inflicted by the world, others by your own hand. At some point, you internalized a story. You're the one who almost does it, who nearly changes, who carries potential that never fully arrives. The story isn't your truth. It's a survival mask, forged in the crucible of fear, rejection, abandonment, and the subtle wounds no one else noticed. Over time, that mask has calcified into an identity, a weight you carry without questioning, a false self that dictates your choices. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." So let's make it conscious. Let's journey back, not to wallow in pain, but to understand its architecture. Do you remember the first time discipline was punished in you? Perhaps you spoke up and were silenced, your voice dismissed as insignificant. Maybe you poured your heart into a project, a dream, only to be mocked or ignored. Or perhaps you built a small routine, took pride in its modest structure, only to watch someone tear it down as if it were nothing. That's where the fracture begins, not in laziness, but in pain, in the quiet erosion of your belief in your own power. Here's the cruel irony. The disciplined part of you, the one that craves structure, control, and focus, is also the most vulnerable. Discipline requires faith not in external systems, but in your own capacity to create order from chaos. When that faith is shattered early, the disciplined self retreats, burrowing deep into the shadows of your psyche. Jung called this the repression of the noble archetype, the king, the warrior, the architect of order and control. This archetype within you longs to build empires, to lead yourself with clarity, to master time and energy. It's still there, alive but unclaimed, twisted by years of internalized defeat. Instead of standing tall, it lingers in the shadows, a ghost of what could have been. Every time you attempt something new, a habit, a routine, a diet, a focused effort, you're not starting from a blank slate. You're confronting every voice that ever told you you won't follow through. You never finish. You're not the kind of person who can change. Until you recognize this, you'll continue to self-sabotage, not because you desire failure, but because a part of you believes it's inevitable. A script written long ago by hands that weren't your own. The two men within Jung's insight cuts deeper. Your outer failures are rarely about effort. They're about identity. You cannot outwork a self-image that contradicts the very thing you're striving to become. You will always revert to the man you believe you are, no matter how many tools, systems, or plans you adopt. So how do you shift that belief? Not with shallow affirmations or fleeting bursts of enthusiasm, but with integration, with the courageous act of reuniting the fractured parts of your psyche. Imagine two men within you. The first seeks power, legacy, structure. He is focused, calm, sovereign, keeping his word even when no one watches, moving with the quiet certainty of a king who knows his throne. The second craves ease, comfort, disappearance. He avoids risk, shuns failure, flees intensity, seeking the warmth of safety over the sharp edge of victory. These two are not enemies. They are split halves of you, each born from the same soul, but shaped by different wounds. As long as you reject one, you'll never be whole. Stop trying to kill the lazy version of yourself. Reclaim him. Speak to him. Ask, what are you protecting me from? Because that part isn't your saboteur, it's your guardian, shielding you from the pain of disappointment, from the sting of being laughed at, abandoned, or misunderstood. When you begin to see this, discipline transforms. It's no longer a battle, it's a homecoming, a reclamation of the throne you abandoned long ago. The king archetype within you, Jung's symbol of order, authority, and purpose, sits waiting, not to dominate, but to stabilize, to anchor you in the truth of who you are. Jung knew every man must eventually face this inner king, and when he does, he stops performing for others, stops chasing external validation. He begins to organize his life not to impress the world, but to reflect the inner hierarchy he's restored. Discipline is psychological architecture, the external mirror of internal order. Without it, you don't just lose productivity, you lose yourself, your sense of who you are meant to be. This is why undisciplined men carry shame, even in solitude, not for what they did or didn't do, but for who they fear they're becoming. The fractured self is a haunted place, a battleground of unclaimed potential, unless you reintegrate. The lost archetypes: the builder, the warrior, the father, the guide you'll keep reaching for, motivation that slips through your fingers like sand. The path to holiness. You weren't meant to rely on motivation. You were meant to remember, to awaken, to walk through your days as a man who has already decided, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is the order I bring to the chaos of existence. It will be painful, you will stumble, but failure will no longer define you, because identity precedes behavior. Once your identity shifts, your actions will follow, like a river finding its course. If you're still here, you feel it. A part of you is stirring, not the hyped-up, overachieving facade, but the ancient, wise, structured, relentless part, the one who builds in silence, not shouts. And now, hear this, you cannot fully reclaim discipline until you forgive yourself for the years you lost. This isn't about punishment or regret. It's about maturity, about stepping into the fullness of who you are. The immature man says, I'm broken, I must be fixed. The mature man declares, I am whole, I must be remembered. Nothing was ever wrong with you, you simply forgot your own name. Every time you choose structure over chaos, presence over distraction, action over hesitation, you're not becoming someone new, you're returning to the man your younger self needed, the man your older self will honor. Jung believed your greatest work isn't success, it's individuation, becoming whole, uniting the fragmented parts of your psyche into one living, breathing truth. Discipline is the path to that truth, the proof to your unconscious that you are safe, that you are in control, that the king has returned to his throne. But this return demands sacrifice. You must let go of the stories that have kept you small, the excuses that have shielded you from your own power. Ask yourself, what would your life look like if you stopped living as a reaction to the world and started living as a declaration of your truth? We'll complete this journey, diving deeper into the nature of time, the weight of mortality, the war that rages when you avoid order, and the quiet, unshakable strength that emerges when you act without needing to feel ready. This isn't about becoming productive, it's about becoming sovereign, a man who rules his own soul. The weight of time and regret. Time doesn't merely pass, it accumulates, each moment layering upon the last, shaping the architecture of your life. Every choice to delay, every surrender to distraction, becomes a brick in the structure of regret, not just a missed opportunity, but a tangible weight that molds who you become. You don't just lose time, you are sculpted by its loss, shaped by the slow erosion of your own will. Jung said, you are what you do, not what you say you'll do. Let that truth haunt you, not for its harshness, but for its clarity. A mirror reflecting the man you're proving yourself to be every day. Most people don't notice when they begin to drift. They wake up years later, staring at a stranger. In the mirror, a man not of their choosing, sculpted by hesitation, by stories that sounded like wisdom, but were fear in disguise. You weren't born lazy. You were trained to mistrust your own power, to blunt the edge of your ambition so it wouldn't threaten anyone, not even yourself. Discipline changes the room. It's not loud, but it carries a weight that unsettles those who haven't yet risen. That's why you hid, why you let go, to stay close to those still sleeping. Because waking up meant walking alone. But what if that loneliness is a crucible, a test of your resolve? What if solitude isn't punishment, but a sacred passage to your own truth? Every time you choose comfort over potential, you practice a kind of death, not physical, but spiritual, a slow fading of the fire that once burned in your eyes, replaced by the quiet resignation of a man who now carries only excuses. Jung didn't believe meaning comes from chasing happiness. He believed it's found in confrontation, facing the dragon of chaos, failure, and pain with open arms. Discipline is your sword in that battle. It doesn't erase fear, it gives you direction, a force stronger than fear itself. Discipline as ritual. Every man is disciplined. The question is to what? Some are disciplined to their distractions, others to their addictions, some to the voices of doubt they inherited and never questioned. Few are disciplined to their becoming, to the relentless pursuit of their own truth. To be one of them, you must see discipline not as a grind, but as a relationship with time. When you choose fleeting pleasure over lasting growth, you tell time, I don't respect you. And time, like any sacred force, responds in kind, moving against you, leaving you feeling late, stuck, as if everything is slipping through your fingers. But align with time, live with reverence for its fleeting gift, and your days transform, not externally at first, but within. You begin to feel carried by a rhythm, a purpose. The calm that comes when your life is no longer a reaction, but a ritual, a sacred dance between you and the future you've sworn to build. At its highest level, discipline is ritual, not willpower, not force, but a sacred rhythm. You wake not because you must, but because you get to meet your oath again, to stand before the altar of your own purpose. You train not to punish your body, but to honor it, to remember the strength that resides within. You eat clean not for vanity, but because your body is the temple of your resolve, a vessel for the work you're called to do. Everything aligns, everything begins to echo your truth. One day, the man you once dreamed of becoming is no longer a distant vision. He's your reflection, staring back with eyes that know their worth. But this won't come quickly, nor from a single epiphany. Discipline is forged through grief, grieving the self who breaks his word, who hides behind someday, who lies awake at night, hollowed out by the knowledge that he ran again. Bury that self, not with guilt, but with honor. He did his best, kept you safe, carried you this far. His time is done. Grieve him, thank him, and release the energy you've spent pretending. With that energy, build mornings of clarity, not chaos, routines that root you, even when you waver, a schedule that doesn't confine you, but sets you free. The sovereign minorder is not your enemy, it is your armor. In a world growing ever more chaotic, a calm, structured man is a rare and invaluable force. Become that man now, not next week, not after another failure. This moment, this breath, this uncomfortable truth stirring within you is your initiation. You don't need more reasons. You don't need to feel ready. You are already worthy of discipline. You've simply forgotten. Let this be the last reminder. Jung believed wholeness is not achieved by adding more, but by embracing all of who you are, even the parts you've shunned, the lazy, weak, chaotic fragments. You're not here to escape them. You're here to lead them, to integrate them into a greater whole. When your inner house is in order, you won't just feel powerful, you'll feel at peace, a peace born of alignment, of knowing you're no longer a stranger to your own soul. Discipline isn't loud. It doesn't scream or beg for recognition. It walks quietly, daily, like a man who has remembered his purpose, who knows why he's here. So return to your vow now. Not tomorrow, not when the stars align, but in this very moment. Because once you do, you'll never avoid discipline again, not because you're forced to, but because you'll know what it feels like to be a man who keeps his word to himself. That man doesn't chase fleeting applause or external validation. He builds brick by brick, in silence, for the quiet certainty that he's reclaimed his throne. And in that reclamation, he becomes sovereign not just over his time, but over his destiny, a living declaration of what it means to be whole.